Hey guys, Paeter here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. After 14 hours with Far Cry 6, I'm still not sure how I feel about it, which in itself does say something significant about my feelings on the game. Stick around, I'll try to explain. Normally my reviews are glorified first impressions based on about 5 hours with a given game, because that's usually plenty of time for me to get to know what the experience will generally be like for me. These days, I almost never have interest in playing games that wait until the 10 plus hours in to really get good. If they don't grab me within 5, I'm pretty much out. There are just too many other options. But I have years of history enjoying most Ubisoft open world games, with the Far Cry series being a favorite, starting with 2. And although most of them have played very much the same since 3, they iterate enough to both improve on things I dislike and unfortunately add new things to try and fix what wasn't broken. The same feels true of Far Cry 6, making one more game in this series that I feel like would be awesome if only they didn't fill in the blank. In 2, that was malaria and jamming weapons. In 3, it was narrow insta-fail missions. In 4, it was keeping you from exploring the whole map. In 5, it was story missions that kidnapped you. And in 6, I think it's hiding things from me. Before getting into that, let me say what I'm really enjoying that ultimately led me to buy the game after renting it, despite the things that I don't like. It still has those knee-deep in foliage sound effects that put me in the game world. Those beautiful environments that make me say, who cares if it looks a lot like the islands in Far Cry 3? And a big open world with tons of stuff to collect and chaos to get caught up in or create, and enemies that are dumb and oblivious enough to, at least on the easy difficulty setting that I default to in games, create some comedic moments as they fall victim to my diehard antics. The good news, which is most important to me even though I may spend less time talking about it now than the bad, is that it's more Far Cry. I'm in. And although it took over 10 hours, I finally started hitting the sweet spot of feeling at home in the gameplay, even with the vast majority of the world still waiting for me to explore it. So how is Far Cry 6 hiding things from me? What does it seemingly not want me to know? Well, it feels like a lot. Buggies, for one. I've tried driving them 2 to 3 times, and they do not respond to my steering inputs. I've never driven a real buggy, so maybe they're simulating something there that real buggy drivers would know all about, but I have no idea what the crap is going on. Enemy location. There's something seriously suspicious about the way enemies spawn into the world in this game. I can clear an area entirely and then turn my head for 2 seconds only to see a red enemy cloud pop up behind me on my minimap. And at least once I had an enemy standing right in front of me that had no representative cloud or marker on my minimap at all. And then there's upgrades and how to get them. This is the big one. Some of this I'm slowly learning. There's just a lot of crafting currencies or crafting components and a lot of different kind of systems at play. Gather this many components out in the world and you can get this weapon or gear upgrade. It's hard to keep track and remember which components upgrade what thing that I had my eye on, but it took me hours of thinking I couldn't upgrade my stamina or healing capacities before realizing, those aren't upgrades for your character that are inherent to your character and stay with your character. They're upgrades tied to the special backpack gadget that you choose to wear. And I kind of just stumbled across that information. I'm glad I finally did, but it feels like an arbitrary mechanics first design choice, forcing attributes that were once bound to your character to now be part of the developer's focus on pre-mission equipment planning. And speaking of equipment, gaining levels in this game seems to only unlock your eligibility to purchase new weapons or gear, which makes gaining a level less satisfying than it's been in previous games. And what those items might be that are unlocked and accessible to buy is a mystery until you actually gain that next level and then go visit a store. On top of that, how your clothing/armor contributes to your defense feels muddy at best. I'm told by its description that this hat here increases my fire resistance, but it's also displayed when I look at it as part of a set. So I'm thinking to myself, do I only get that bonus when wearing the whole set? And how much exactly does it protect me? At least the weapons in this game have vague bars next to stats like damage and rate of fire. It would be nice to be given a percentage of damage reduction for my armor in the description for these bits of gear that I can wear. All that to say that focusing on upgrading my character the way I want to feels impossible. Right now, I feel like I'm just kind of out in the world doing stuff, grabbing whatever crafting components I run into, and hoping that the next time I check in at a base, I'll discover that there's a new upgrade option that I'll like. And that kind of uncertainty robs me of a very yummy carrot that used to stay dangled in front of me as a major part of the gameplay loop and the progression grind in this series. I just don't feel near the same pull to continue one mission after another that I felt in the last 4 games, where I had much better understanding of how to advance my abilities the way I wanted to. Now, of course, there are tutorials that pop up as new information is introduced. There may be some things that are confusing to me that I don't know how to do that I have been told in those tutorial pop-ups. But once you've read the simple 3-panel instruction, it disappears forever and can only be accessed again by, believe it or not, installing the separate Ubisoft Connect app, which I did in search of info about generally what kinds of missions yield depleted uranium, a common key upgrade currency. But after installing the app and looking through it, I couldn't find that information that I wanted, and just thought to myself, crap, why did Ubisoft make me do this and still not give me what I think is pretty basic info? I mean, here I tried to use the resource that they provided, that they intend for me to use to get those questions answered or refreshed in my memory, but it's like they're unaware that there's an internet that would be much easier to go to get the information I want. And of course, that's what exactly what I'm going to do going forward playing this game. However, offsetting my inability to control the upgrade process in order to gain an edge is the lack of need that I'm feeling to get an edge. The easiest difficulty setting feels easier than that of the easiest difficulty settings in previous entries, and that's a plus for me, since I'm a gamer who wants a power fantasy, not a challenge. Now, wild animals still make me jump when their teeth suddenly fill the screen, but on easy, they do very little damage to me. So I feel like self-preservation and the right character build are less vital to me than in previous titles. And once I realized that, I kind of just said, okay, if this world isn't likely to kill me, let's go out and see what I can do. So in losing a significant thing I liked in the previous games, I've gained a daring I usually don't have until late or post-game. Now, this could mean that the game will lose my interest as I get deeper in, but I suspect I'll remain interested at least until I've explored the entire map, as exploration, along with having a power fantasy, is a major draw for me in video games. Something else I often look for in games are their themes. So does this game have anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? There are the usually light supernatural or occult elements that are present in other games in the series. Those kind of make a return here. In this case, nondescript idols you walk up to and kind of quote-unquote honor in exchange for XP. But I haven't seen the lore or beliefs tied to the concept explored at all. They're just kind of jars filled with XP in terms of how they're presented and as far as how I think of them. And sure, in the story there are political comparisons one could make to real-world countries ruled by corrupt dictators, but the political themes are of little interest to me compared to a more fundamental theme about humanity in this game. Specifically, that enemies are people too. They see their cause as good and have been caught up in lies. The game encourages you to see enemies as people and not worthless beings of pure evil. Some of them are just trying to do right by their families or their country. Others of them are willing to be bribed and work with you if you approach with your weapon holstered. You just don't know until you kind of approach them and see. And although that doesn't keep me from mowing them down indiscriminately when it's expedient, they are just digital puppets made of ones and zeros after all. Humanizing even enemies is a seemingly intended statement worth carrying into the real world. Even those you and I think of as enemies or kind of the other side of the argument or the other worldview or whatever, those folks are people. Maybe people who are very wrong about some things in our estimation, but still people trying to scrape their way along in this broken mess of a world. And as believers in Jesus, we shouldn't add to the mess by mentally categorizing and labeling people into groups without nuance. Jesus loved every individual that he came across. While his peers were jadedly lumping people into groups like Samaritans and prostitutes and tax collectors, Jesus interacted with each individual as they were, without adding baggage based on superficial information. And that's something that we should aim to imitate as we chat online and mention people groups that we have differences with. So in summary, like many games before it in the series, Far Cry 6 seems to be more Far Cry, with some new things I like, some new things I don't, and the same meat and potatoes core that brings me back, a glutton for both punishment and pleasure, game after game in this series. And those are all my thoughts for now on Far Cry 6. Thanks for watching.